Hi guys, so in this lesson what we're going to do is we're going to work with the distribution that we have from the previous lesson and we're going to make some modifications. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a custom domain name and we'll use the domain name that we registered earlier in the section. Now if you didn't register a domain name, that's okay. You can just watch what I do and learn from me. But if you did register a domain name, you'll have a chance to use it now. And you'll also set up a secure certificate, so an SSLTLS certificate. And that means that we can have secure connections using HTTPS. The first thing we need to do is we're going to go to a service called AWS Certificate Manager. If I just type ACM, it's going to find it. Now, you need to change to the North Virginia region. So just head up to the top left right hand corner and choose US East North Virginia. Then we're going to click on Get Started. And this is how we can request a certificate. We're going to request a public certificate, click on Request, and then we need to type the domain name. Mine is cloud4beginners.net. If you wanted to add additional ones, you could. For instance, you could add www.cloud4beginners.net. And in that case, you would just need to set up the correct records in Route 53 as well. I'm just going to stick to this one here. That's all I need. Click on Next. And there's a couple of options for validation. One is to use DNS. It's a little bit more complex and can take longer. I prefer to choose email validation. Now you do need to be the registered owner of this domain name. So you can't just pick any domain name, because you're going to receive an email to the account of the registered owner of the domain name. So click on Next. I don't need any tags, and I'm just going to click Confirm and Request. And what should happen now is I'll receive an email in my inbox. Here's the email that I received, and all I need to do is just click on this link here and then click on I approve. Now I've got a couple of emails, so I'll just go through each one and do the same thing. Back in the management console, I'm going to click on Continue, and we can see now that we have our certificate and it's been issued and it's not currently in use. So again, when you do this, make sure you're in the North Virginia region. That's important for when we add our certificate to CloudFront. So the certificate's set up. Let's head back to CloudFront. In CloudFront, I'm going to check the box here next to my distribution, click on Distribution Settings, and then Edit. So firstly, I need to give it the domain name. So I'm going to give my custom domain name, which for me is cloud4beginners.net. We now have this option to select a custom SSL certificate. If that's grayed out, it's probably because you didn't create your certificate in the correct region. You've got to do it in North Virginia. So now I can just select in this box and we can see this is our certificate here. So I select my certificate. I'm going to scroll down. Now, one thing we didn't do before is enter our default root object. That's why we got that XML response instead of actually seeing our web page with our image. So I'm going to put the default root object as index.html, and that means that when we go to the website without any sort of parameters like a /index.html, it will know to pull the root document, which in this case is our index.html file. So I've added that in as well, and I don't need to change anything else. Let's just click on Yes, Edit. And whenever you make these changes to your distribution, you'll see that it then goes back into a status of in progress or deploying. And so you just got to wait a little while until it completes. While that's happening, what we can do is go over to Route 53 and we're going to create our alias record. So I'm going to open the Route 53 console. We're going to click on Hosted Zones. Find the hosted zone for the domain you registered. And as we can see, we don't have any records yet. So what we need to do is create a record set. And we're going to create a record. We don't need to give it a name because we want our domain name to be cloud4beginners.net. If you wanted to do the www, you'd actually put that in here. And that could be an additional record that you have. So if you added that to your certificate, then you'd create an additional record in here. Now I didn't do that, so I'm just going to remove that, and I just want to have this naked domain name here. The type of record we're going to use is an A record, so that does mean that we're going to resolve the domain name to an IP address. But we're going to use the special type of a record, which is an alias record. So if we click on yes next to alias and now come down into alias targets, we can see some options here. So you can see an S3 website endpoint, but if we scroll down, we've also got our CloudFront distribution. So I'm going to select the CloudFront distribution. You could then select a routing policy. Now for this, we're just going to use simple because we're just resolving a single record to a single CloudFront distribution. So I can click on create. And we now have our record. So we have our record, which is a type A. It's an alias to our CloudFront distribution, and it's going to resolve cloudforbeginners.net. Now, by the way, it can take a few minutes for Route 53 to propagate these records around the internet. So you may find that initially, if you try to connect to your domain name, so cloudforbeginners.net in my example, it might not resolve. You can just check on the command line. I'm going to use the dig utility. And what you do is you put in dig cloudforbeginners.net. And I should see a response. So here in the answer section, we can see some IP addresses. So that looks good. Now, if you're on Windows, just do nslookup instead. And it's the very same thing. You put in cloudforbeginners.net or your domain name and see what response you get. If it says something like NX domain, it means non-existent domain. So it means it's not propagated yet. Once the records are resolving correctly, we can then go to a browser window and put in our domain name and see if we can connect to our CloudFront distribution. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to type https:// and then cloudforbeginners.net. And let's see if this resolves. And it does. So we've got our static website running on S3. And again, we're using a CloudFront distribution. So our objects are coming from an edge location closest to wherever you are in the world. And we're also using a secure listener. So we have a certificate that's been issued and it actually has our domain name on it. So that's it for this lesson. I hope you enjoyed that. And what you can do, by the way, so now that you've got your Route 53 domain name registered, what you can do is you can create any website you like and host it. As long as it's a static website, you can run it from S3. And so rather than using CloudFront, because you will pay a bit for CloudFront, so we're going to delete our CloudFront distribution. But on S3, you'll only pay a tiny amount for the storage space. And in the free tier, you're not going to pay anything at all for that first year. So you can create your own static website, host it in an S3 bucket, and then use CloudFront to actually connect to it. So again, you would create a record, choose an alias, and then choose whatever bucket you've selected for your static website. So that's something you might want to do. Maybe you can showcase something cool to your employer, and that will look good. So that's just one idea. In this case, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to delete this record because I don't need it anymore. And then I'm going to head back to my CloudFront distribution and just delete my distribution. Now this is a two-step process. So firstly, you need to select your distribution and click on disable. And then this will take some time. It tells you there up to 15 minutes. So you've got to wait until it actually says deployed in a disabled state. And at that point, you can actually delete it. So you can't delete it at this stage. It's grayed out. So what I would normally do is just leave this open, this particular window, because you don't want to forget. And then just come back in 10 or 15 minutes and you'll be able to delete your distribution.